I think, by the way, I'm going to try to use different colors now. So I'll try to use like this weird yellow color just to draw the field. Red for marking players, and then blue for like annotating. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Maybe I'll see how convenient that is. Okay, so once again, we have the field. We have the offensive team kind of going upwards, and I'm going to a little bit of review. Okay, so imagine a scenario. We have sort of the star, that's the thrower, right? We have someone downfield. And what we talked about last time is this idea that that there are three main threats you can consider, right? Especially if the player's like in the middle of the field. You can consider kind of cutting to one side of the field, the other, or deep. Right? So you can either cut into there, or cut deep. That's sort of the general class of things they can do. And if there is like basically the defense will kind of try to systematically eliminate those, right? So you have a defender, that's the mark. You could say that, okay, they've eliminated this threat, that one's no longer available. You have two others, and then you can kind of allocate your defender to eliminate one of those. This is all just review, so I'm just kind of speeding through it. Okay, but so basically, the question was, if you choose a defender, they can eliminate one of those other options, but they can't eliminate both. So are there some other factors that can help you out, right? So we said, if the thrower doesn't have deep throws, then the deep one is an option. The defender can take away the in cut, and then all your options are eliminated. We talked about wind, we talked about sideline, we talked about spoiled spaces. So there's one. I think there's one more of these that are very important, that come up a lot. To me, I think this is like it's so prevalent that and kind of so fundamental that if your team can't handle this, either from an offensive or defensive side, then I think you're probably not going to you're not going to get to the national level. I think for either college or club, it's kind of roughly the same. So yeah, it's really important. Anyone have a guess? All right, here is the answer. The answer being, this thing that I thought of. So the idea is what if the team or what if the thrower doesn't have breakthroughs, and you would expect this to happen. So the again, considering this forehand force, the cut to the break side, again, this is the break side, right? Because that's where the mark is defending. The cut to that side isn't viable because the thrower can't throw it over there, right? So they haven't developed the skills, or don't have the interest. They haven't been looking over there, whatever. They haven't placed an emphasis on throwing to that break side. So that cut isn't an option, and because that cut isn't an option, the mark doesn't need to be as concerned with it, right? So why would we allocate a defender, a very important defender, the mark, to defending this cut that the thrower probably won't throw to anyway? So what you'll see is a very simple adjustment by the mark to change their force a bit. Here's a little bit flatter. They might even go a little more flat, right? Or if the offense continues to not throw that option, they'll go even more flat. So even though it's a force forehand, they might end up with a very, very flat force. Possibly even more egregiously, right? And the way this works is that the defense needs to keep sort of upping the stakes. They need to keep seeing how much they can get away with. They need to keep going flatter and seeing how much of the deep throw they can take away, maybe even how much of the strong side throw they can take away, until they finally need to respect that break side throw, until the thrower punishes that mark. And yeah, you'll see this again, I think, in say maybe like a regional setting, especially if you have like a game where one team is a lot stronger than the other. Within like a point, maybe 2 points, that stronger team is going to sniff out the fact that the weaker team can't break their mark. And when they do, they're going to start adjusting their mark. And then at that point, right, like this cut is definitely available, but they're just not taking it. At this point, the deep throw isn't really available because of that flat mark. And then the defender, can just really focus on taking away the under. And then the mark's probably going to make that throw harder as well. So basically everything just gets shut down. So I think this is just super important for the defensive team to recognize. And then for the offensive team, they need to see that happen in real time. And like that has to be the emphasis. I think you might see this with a team that's really focused on their deep game. Like that's how they tend to win, right? And so they don't place as much emphasis on a break side offense. But when that happens, like the defense needs to adjust, right? So they say, okay, they're baiting us deep, and so we need to take away the deep. Let's try flattening out the mark and see if they punish us for that. And if they don't, then just lean into it hard. And it's almost not even that complex of strategy at that point. It's just like, can this team break the mark? If not, game over almost. There are other ways to deal with the flat mark. You can use handler movement and things like that. But the break side field really becomes a big emphasis at that point. So yeah, I don't know. I can't stress this enough how important this is. This can happen. This could be your coach, your captain, or some leader on the team in a huddle saying, defensively, hey, recognize that they're not breaking us, right? So let's go flatter until they show that they can break us. Or it could be, an individual player. Sort of, you've guarded someone for a couple points now. You've kind of seen the throws that they have, and you're like, yeah, they haven't really tried to break me. I haven't felt like they were going to break me. I'll adjust a little bit flatter. We see how it goes. They're still not breaking me. Yeah, they're just staring up the strong side of the field. They're not looking for the break option at all. You just keep going flatter, and then your defenders, your teammates recognize that, I'm seeing that flat mark. I don't need to worry about the deep threat as much. I can start moving under a bit. And then, so it can either happen through the huddle or it can happen sort of more organically like that. Okay. Any questions about this? There's probably other situations also that I just haven't thought about yet, but I don't know, maybe there's others I'm forgetting. Okay. So I want to move on now and talk about small field ultimate, right? So not 7-on-7, but I'm going to start with a 1-on-1 as a meme, basically. But has anyone here played 1-on-1 before? think it's pretty fun. It's extremely tiring. The rule exception obviously is that you're allowed to throw to yourself because there's no one else to throw it to. But it's a good time. It's also impossible. In a corridor. Okay. Okay, so I don't know what to say about one-on-one. I don't know what the strategy is. Headwind and advantage. Headwind is an advantage. Someone says, yeah. Yeah, I think you basically just like chuck the disc out there, try to get the float. If you have a nice headwind, it'll help you out. Go run it down. That's your best bet. All right, not much to say about that. 2-on-2. 2-on-2. So, has anyone played 2-on-2 before? It's funny. I think there are usually, for 2-on-2, there are sort of adaptations, right? You have like hotbox or things like that. Boot. I think boot is typically 2-on-2. But people don't tend to play regular ultimate 2-on-2. It's maybe not that interesting. But maybe something just to get us started on how to think about this stuff is like, if you are that other player, right? What are the interesting points on the field to be? I think all I'll say here. Well, okay, let's do this. So, what are the interesting points in the field to be? I guess let's assume a mark that's, kind of biased. Call this, a force forehand or something like that. So I think the interesting points. I think to start off and say what's not interesting. Standing right in front of the thrower is probably not interesting. Right? It's probably not a good spot to be. There's not like the defender will probably place themselves, I don't know, right here, defending, any attempt at attacking in this space. And then if they go deep, the throw would have to be like kind of right over their heads. So I don't think that's that interesting. Maybe another uninteresting space is right here. Again, we looked at in the past. Like if you can't go deep, you're kind of limiting your options. I mean, you can still cut to this side or this side. So maybe that's okay. But I think that's kind of a less powerful position to be. Because the defender is just they're going to place themselves under, here. And I think no matter where the cut is, the defender can have a chance to defend that. So I don't know if that's so interesting. So where are interesting places to go? I think the middle of the field is tried and true. Someone says start in the center of the space, the distance of a comfortable throw away. Yeah, I think that's an interesting spot to be. You have a lot of options, right? You can cut to this break space. You can cut to this strong side space. If the defender was trying to really take, say, that the strong side cut away by, I guess I should have used blue there. If the defender was sort of positioned out here to just give themselves a head start, they keep getting beat under, so they want to give them enough room to cover that in cut. Well, now maybe that inside break is an option, or maybe like a bullet right to them or something like that. But yeah, I think this is what Felix mentioned. Yeah, this is a possibility. And then even the deep cut is a possibility. I think the throw, you generally want the throw to go out into space. So again, like maybe the throw goes out of that corner, and then the cutter cuts onto there. But yeah, lots of options. Pretty interesting spot. What's another? All right. I'll throw out another. So we saw this. Okay. Here's a hint. We saw this in the film that we watched. What are the interesting points that people in the film found? Here's one. On the break sideline. This is where that first player got that pass. Now here you might not have as many options, but as long as you have two, then it still works, right? So like three open options isn't necessarily that much better than two, in a sense. Let's see. So they can go next to throw. Okay, yeah, I'll cover that in a minute. But yeah, just talking about this one. So the options here are basically like the deep one is very viable, right? There's all this space. There's all this space. So the deep option in this spot is very viable. And so I'll just kind of write that. I think you also have an option where you kind of push out and then cut into that. It's maybe not the immediate movement, but it's definitely an option. And then, you can kind of go down to that space there. So that might be an interesting spot to be. Felix mentions next to the thrower, so go lead pass up line, or the thrower can give up the line if the defender sags off. Yeah, I think you're talking about on this side. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I think this is an interesting spot to be. I think this one's a little bit different in some sense. That there are two threats here. One of them is this so-called upline cut or strike cut. Upline would be if this kind of were on the sideline instead. So I might call this a strike cut. But yeah, this is an option. And then what is the other option? The other option is maybe just, the throw going. That should be red. I'm having trouble with these colors. The throw going right to them, maybe, or maybe out into this space. So I think this one's kind of interesting because it's sort of more of a stat. Like there's one option that's where it's in motion, and the other option is sort of they're more static. And okay, they're actually talking about the open side. Okay, so the thrower maybe positioned more there, and then you have the way I look at this is you have options sort of this way and this way, and then there's also a give and go. I'm not going to get into that today, but definitely important, right? The idea being that you pass to this, and then the thrower can actually get open. So although I don't want to dismiss that. Like if you played 2-on-2, that's going to be the bread and butter basically of an offense. I mean, at least one of the. It's either isolation with someone downfield, or it's going to be give and go stuff. But I'm not going to get into that yet today. Oh, one thing I want to mention that with this throw over here, what you might want to do is actually even position them more up into this space. This is kind of an interesting space because you still have this option, and then now the throw over here is a little less static. Right, there's sort of more room to cut to, so that might be interesting as well. Okay. Anything more to say about 2-on-2? All right, let's talk about 3-on-3. So 3-on-3 is, I think, where you get to an actual interesting ultimate game, right? People play 3-on-3, so-called mini. And it's fun. And I mentioned in I think the first class we did, like it's definitely less interesting than 7-on-7. There's a reason why people play 7-on-7. You play a lot of mini, it's fun. You kind of eventually get sick of it. But there's still interesting stuff there. I think, again, it's a lot more on the kind of micro strategy level. It's a little more maybe tactics, you might want to call it, than strategy. But it's the kind of thing that we were just talking about, like where can we kind of position our players to get the most out of them. So we just looked at a few scenarios, and I think a lot of the same ones still apply. But now you have two people. All right, question: Should we stay with a forehand force, or should I move to backhand force just for variety? I think the forehand force is it's more familiar to people, so it's sort of more easy to talk about strategy because it's less disorienting. But at the same time, it might be good to get some variety. 3v3 has some realistic situations that arise in 7-on-7. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the thing that in 3v3 you'll get a lot of the same kinds of situations, but there's just like a single situation rather than multiple of them going on at the same time. So whereas I think 7-on-7 has like sort of different scenarios layered on top of each other. Like when we watched that film a little bit, there's like some downfield action that was interesting. There's also, at the same time, questions about how the handlers should position and how they want to get their objectives done. And that stuff kind of interacts in a more interesting way than you tend to see on 3-on-3. But, and there are these microcosms that I think are as interesting. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I guess I'll just stick with the forehand force. I'm going to propose some different arrangements of these players, and then again, you can tell me ones that I missed. So we're just going to assume kind of a vanilla forehand force, and we can break that assumption later. But basically, here are some options. So I think kind of the most to me my go-to would be this kind of configuration. Definitely not saying it's the only available one, but this is like my personal. If we're going to play 3-on-3 and we don't talk about strategy before, I'm just going to assume that I'm either this person downfield, kind of staking out the middle space, and then having my break side option available. Or I'm going to set myself up down there. And I actually, when I was talking about 2-on-2, I forgot for one more interesting place in the field. I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so with the setup, like we have all those options we talked about before. I think the thing to keep in mind is how they interact, right? You have multiple players now. So if this player here were to cut up into this space, you see a conflict now in this space with this player. So just something to be aware of. And basically, how that works. And again, I don't want to get too much into movement today, but if that player did cut up into that space, and then this space becomes spoiled, then that's no longer an option for this player, and they need, they may want to move down here just to give another option to the thrower, but they almost want to move there just so that they're more, they have more options, will be more effective. They need to get to this place such that they have, say, this space to attack, and then to give this player, room to attack over there. It's getting to be a messy diagram, but again, don't want to get too much into today. But the idea of as a player moves, the space changes, and then you need to adjust as well if you're the other player to keep your spaces open. Okay. So yeah, I'm not gonna. At a later point, we'll talk about the available actions for particular offense, but today I'm just talking about the sort of available configurations that are out there. So this is one. Another one is to send both players downfield, right? And I have friends that like to play this way. And there's a trade-off there, right? Now you don't have a handler, you don't have an easy someone to just maybe do an easy reset with. You have to look downfield in order to find your reset if you need to reset the stall count. And you can't do as much give and go stuff that was mentioned before. But I think there's maybe a few advantages to this as well. One, it's going to just to be clear, the sort of areas to attack are here and here. I'll talk about more about disadvantages first. The disadvantage, I think the deep option is a little less viable because you have someone further downfield. Not impossible, but less viable. And then, I talked about sort of missing that reset option. But there are a few things you gain. One is that, these cuts, if they need to, they can continue down into this space. So before there was a person there, now there's not. It's a bigger space now, right? So you sort of have the freedom to go into that space and do more if you need to. The other thing is that, you could have, with this kind of setup, or this kind of setup, I didn't mention this one before, but this is also an option. You can get into that situation I mentioned in a previous class where you have the defender spoiling a space, right? So you can imagine like this offensive player, maybe the defender sags off a bit. And then now this space is not an option. Right, perhaps. Depending on their exact position, if they're able to sag up there or something like that. So the defender on this player can basically move out here and influence throws to this side of the field. And so for that reason, you might not want that player there. A similar thing can happen on the other side, right? So if you wanted this player, right, again, maybe the defender kind of sags off, they take away this option, and then, defensive consistency, the mark doesn't need to guard that option anymore, they can now go flatter, right? And so that now takes away the deep option, and then now to this side of the field. That's kind of the only space possible, but again, the defender will sort of emphasize taking that away, maybe even farther under. And then you're all locked up, right? All the threats are eliminated. So just things to be careful of, that, which is, a reason why it might be nice to put both players downfield. Maybe the last one I'll cover today is this strong side idea, the strong sides point. So maybe we still have the handler back here or something. So this one's kind of interesting. It's similar to the cutter on this side. The cutter on this side would have a deep option, and then like basically two strong side options. Or maybe, this, I guess this is possible too. But this is, I think, definitely the player on this side sort of is emphasizing attacking into the strong side space. They can attack the break side space, but they aren't getting that much out of it. Certainly not that many yards. But over here, they start on the strong side. And then now what they're emphasizing is attacking the break side. Right, so you can imagine some cut like this kind of dragging across the field, and then the thrower has maybe an option there or an option there. It's like what you may call a break mark drill. But yeah, the thrower is just asked to break the mark, and if they can't, either on that inside break or that around break, then success. And you're getting to the break side of the field, which is really valuable. We talked about that before. And of course you need 2 threats, right? So the other threat is just sort of cutting into that space. This is kind of an awkward cut. I think this is why, I think the reason why you're going to see this less. Someone said there's potential for an immediate continuation. I believe you. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. There's kind of some lag here, I think, so I don't always know what you're referring to. But if you want to clarify, I can talk about that. But yeah, so this, I think the reason why people don't tend to set up in that spot is that this cut is a little awkward and doesn't necessarily buy that much. Like getting the disc over on this sideline isn't necessarily where you want to be. It's maybe less valuable than other places. At a later point, we'll talk about like positional value. But I think a really underrated aspect of this position is that you can put the defender in a really awkward position. Like say you position a little off the side. Where's the defender going to defend, right? Should they be on this side, which is like, that's the strong side, probably where they typically be. But then this cut is very wide open. Okay. Do they defend on this side, which, okay, maybe that makes more sense to stop that bigger threat. But now this throw here is kind of almost a gimme. It's really easy to cut down and get that gimme pass. Should they position under, then you can imagine the throw kind of going out of space and then beating them that way. Should they position on top? Like that again, probably just gives them the easy throw. So it's an awkward position for the defender to be. When on the sideline, it's sort of a lot easier for the defender to stake out a position. Like this position here can help them on deep cuts or this kind of like drag cut across the field, and they just have to rely on the mark to stop the break side. It's a lot more clear what the defender's supposed to do, but on the strong side over here, it's not so clear how the defender should be positioned. So that might be a good reason to use it. Okay, Felix says there's potential for immediate continuation for the 2 players downfield setup. Oh, okay. So basically the argument here that with the 2 players downfield, that if, a very basic situation might be, a cut to here, oops, we'll use blue. A cut to here, the throw goes up, completed, and then as soon as this player catches it, they have another option downfield. Which is great, right? Because you don't want to spend 5 seconds getting a position for your next yardage gain. If you have someone immediately that can, cut as a follow-up, that's great. So yeah, I think definitely a good thing to consider. Let's see. What about another question? I think this might be the last question, and then I'll call this a day because we're bumping up against an hour. Okay, what about equilateral triangle with the thrower? Equilateral triangle with the thrower, thinking about continuations. Where, I think I have to know where people are positioned. Like, is it this kind of thing? I guess there's just a lot of different triangles to draw. Both downfield. So something like this. Okay. Yeah, I think if I looked at something about like this, I think you'd have to think about for each player, what are their options going to be? And I think now I'm not saying that this is not possible, but as a player here, I have okay, this is an obvious space for me to use. That's number one, right? But I don't feel as good personally. Again, personally, I don't feel as good about going to this space because of this player over here. It matters what the defender is. So you might have this defender, like if the mark is there, you might have the defender sort of more out and this defender more under. And then, so, we're not going to go into this, but like the defender could help deep in that sense. So here, like okay, this now seems more possible for sure. But that's sort of assuming that the defender is sort of on this side of them, which means I think the in cut is a little less viable. Like this cut is less viable because of this defender. So then I'd say it just feels to me like there's fewer options. Like I don't know. Like I would feel like as a cutter, this is kind of the only cut that I'm really interested in, which can be okay. I mean, like it's still like, because this mark is sort of left out on an island there, like you can have both these options. But I don't know. As that player, I'm not sure I feel great about it. And then similarly, I think for this cutter, you have this space, and then this one also feels a little awkward because of this defender in this space. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not something that my mind is drawn to, I guess. If either defender poaches, then it's a quick punish. Yeah, I think I don't know. I'd probably, in order to like, I'm not sure I could give the best rationale for this, the best defense of this. I think this is up to someone else to really show how this would work. And honestly, I'd probably have to defend it as well. Like if I'd have to play against a team that is doing this, and then kind of let instincts take over and kind of see where how I tend to play it, but and then see it, maybe they're beating me, and then I could learn how it is effective. But yeah, I don't know. I think I see a little with the players in the middle. I see a little too much interaction with them. I think. I don't know. I'll think about it. All right. Thank you everyone for hanging out. I guess that's it. And have a great couple weeks. Yeah, thanks for coming. It was fun. So yeah, I'll get it up on YouTube as well. All right, have a good one.